2 a.m., your eyes are burning from the screen glow. Your coffee's gone cold 3 times, but you did it. You just pushed your first game to Steam. 6 months of work, procedural dungeons, pixel art characters, a combat system that feels just right. You used GitHub Copilot for the tricky algorithms. ChatGPT helped you polish the dialogue. And Midjourney generated concept art that you painted over and refined. It's a hybrid workflow, but it's yours. You made thousands of creative decisions to bring this world to life. You hit publish, the store page goes live, and your game is out there. And then right before you collapse into bed, the question hits you, one you've been avoiding for months. Do you actually own this? Like legally own it? Could you register this copyright? Could you defend it if somebody copied your mechanics, your art, or your code? Or did you accidentally create something that exists in a legal gray zone because you let AI touch too much of it? You're not alone in asking this question. Thousands of developers are shipping AI-assisted games right now, and most of them have no idea what they actually own. They don't know where the line is between AI-generated and AI-assisted. They don't know how to document their process or how to fill out a copyright application when AI is involved. And that uncertainty is dangerous because you don't know what you own, and that means you don't know how to protect it. Last episode, we talked about building a fortress around your work to protect it from AI. Today, we're talking about what happens when you let AI inside those walls. How to use these powerful tools without giving up your authorship. How to stay the creator when your collaborator is an algorithm. I'm your host for AIX Gaming's Part 2 of Protecting Your Work, and this is how game developers can still own their work in the age of AI.
Welcome to AIX Gaming, presented by the Rift Fitters Network.
Welcome back. If you caught our first episode, we focused on protection, how to lock down your work from scraping, theft, and AI training data sets. Today we're flipping the conversation. We're talking about creation, specifically creation with AI as your tool. Here's what we're covering. First, we're surveying the AI Toolbox. What are developers actually using right now and why? Then we're diving deep into human authorship. What does the Copyright Office actually require? And how do you make sure that your work qualifies? After that, we're getting into disclosure and defense. When do you need to tell the Copyright Office that you used AI? How do you word it? What documentation protects you? And then we'll walk you through registering your AI-assisted games step by step with specific attention to those disclosure boxes everybody's afraid of. We'll close with something a little bit bigger, creating ethically in the AI era, because what's legal and what's right aren't always the same thing. And the choices we make now will shape what game development looks like for the next couple generations. By the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly what you own, how to prove it, and how to build games with AI without losing the creative soul in the process. Act 1, the AI Toolbox. Let's talk about what's actually happening in game development right now. AI isn't some distant future threat or promise. It's already here. It's in your IDE, it's in your art pipeline, it's in your workflow, whether you consciously adopted it or not. GitHub Copilot is probably the most obvious example. You're writing code and Copilot suggests the next line. Sometimes the whole function. It's trained on billions of lines of public code, and it's learned patterns, structures, and common solutions to problems. You hit tab and suddenly you've got a working implementation of something that would have taken you 20 minutes to write from scratch. ChatGPT and Claude are being used for everything: dialogue generation, quest design, debugging assistance, documentation. You describe what you need and the model generates options. You refine and integrate those parts into your work. Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, concept art, sprite generation, and texture creation. You prompt for a visual style, generate dozens of opinions, options, then paint over them, modify them, use them as references. The AI gives you raw material and you shape it into something that fits your game's aesthetic. There are AI tools for music composition like Suno and Udio, and for sound effect generation like 11 Labs. For procedural level design, for playtesting analysis, the toolbox is exploding, and most developers are using at least one of these tools in some capacity. The thing is, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. These tools are very powerful. They speed up iteration, they help you explore ideas faster, and they lower the barrier to entry for solo developers who couldn't afford to hire artists or composers or any other piece of the puzzle previously. The temptation is real. You can build faster, prototype quicker, explore more creative directions in less time, and AI becomes a force multiplier for your productivity. But there's a risk that comes with that speed. The risk is authorship. Every time you use an AI tool, you're introducing a question mark into your ownership chain. Did you create this, or did the AI? And if someone challenges your copyright, can you prove that you were the creative force? There's also the disclosure problem. You're supposed to tell the Copyright Office when AI contributed to your work, but a lot of developers don't, either because they don't know they're supposed to, or because they're afraid it'll actually weaken their copyright claim, or because they're not even sure what counts as an AI contribution. So you've got this situation where developers are shipping games with AI-assisted code, art, and design, but they're not documenting the process. They're not being transparent in their applications, and they're setting themselves up for potential legal problems down the line. Here's the framework I want you to hold in your mind. AI is a tool, a powerful, sophisticated, sometimes unpredictable tool, but nonetheless, just like a game engine, a graphics library, or a sound synthesis program, a tool. The question isn't whether you should use it, the question is how and when you should use it, and more importantly, how you document the use of it so you can prove your authorship when it matters. Because the law doesn't care how fast you shipped it, it cares whether a human created your work, and you need to be able to show that that human was you. Act 2, Human Authorship. Let's get into the legal framework. What does the U.S. Copyright Office actually say about AI and authorship? Here's the core rule, straight from their 2023 guidance, which still holds today in 2025 and beyond. AI-generated works are not copyrightable. If an AI created it autonomously with no meaningful human creative input, it cannot be protected by copyright. Why? Because copyright law requires human authorship. It's literally in the statute. The Copyright Act protects original works of authorship. Authorship means a human author, not a machine, not an algorithm, not an AI model, at least for now. So if you type a prompt into Midjourney and use the output exactly it comes out, you don't own that image. And if ChatGPT writes your dialogue system and you just paste it directly into your game without modification, you don't own that text. The AI generated it, you requested it. That's not the same as creating it. But here's where it gets a little bit nuanced. AI-assisted work is copyrightable. If you use AI as a tool in a creative process where you maintain meaningful human control and where you make significant creative decisions, you can own that result. Now, a key point is meaningful human control. So what does that actually mean? So let's break it down with a few examples. You're designing a character and you use Midjourney to generate the concept art based on a very detailed prompt. You get about 50 variations, you select 3 composite elements from all 3, paint them over, adjust the details, refine the color palette, and integrate them into your game's art style. That's meaningful human control. You used AI to generate raw material, but you transformed it through your creative decisions. Now contrast that with you type fantasy warrior character into an AI generator. Take the first output and drop it directly into your game. That's not meaningful human control. That's just using an AI generated asset. Code. You're writing pathfinding algorithms. Copilot suggests a function, you read it, you modify the logic to fit your specific game structure, you optimize it for your performance constraints, and you integrate it with your existing systems. That is AI assisted. You are still the author. But if Copilot writes the entire algorithm and you just accept it without understanding it or modifying it, the authorship claim gets weaker. You're not creating, you're copy-pasting. The Copyright Office is not looking for perfection. They're looking for creative input. They want to see that you made decisions, exercised judgment, transformed the AI output into something that reflects your artistic choices. And this is where documentation becomes critical. You need to be able to show your process. You need evidence that you were actually the prompt engineer. Not only that, but a creator who used AI as one of many tools. So what counts as AI assisted versus AI generated exactly? So here's a rough guideline. If you could swap out the AI tool for a different tool or a method and still create something similar because you were driving the creative decisions, that's most likely AI assisted. If removing the AI means that the work wouldn't exist at all because the AI did all of the creative heavy lifting, that's probably AI generated. A texture you painted over after AI generation, AI assisted. A texture you pulled straight from the generator, AI generated. Code you modified and integrated, AI assisted. Code you copied wholesale, AI generated. And it goes on with dialogue and so forth. The line isn't always clear. There's a spectrum. But the more human creativity you can point to, the safer you're likely going to be. Act 3, disclosure and defense. Now let's talk about that disclosure. This is where a lot of developers panic. If you tell the Copyright Office that I used AI, will they reject my application, or will I lose my copyright? The short answer is no. Transparency doesn't hurt you, but lying does. So here's what you need to understand. The Copyright Office wants to know that what is human and what is AI. Not because they're trying to reject your work, but because they need to know exactly what they're registering. Your copyright only covers the human-authored portions, and they need to identify those portions. So when you file an application, there's a question about whether this material contains AI or other non-human sources. If you answer honestly, that is your best policy. If you used AI, say yes. Then there's a text box where you describe your AI contribution. This is where people get scared. What do you write? How much detail do you give? So here's a good example. AI tools were used to generate initial concept art and code suggestions. All outputs were significantly modified, refined, and integrated by the human author. The final work reflects substantial human creative judgment and authorship. That's clear, it's honest, and it makes your authorship claim explicit. Now here's a bad example. AI generated most of the art and code. I think you can tell that makes it sound like AI did the creative work and you just assembled it. Even if that's not what happened, the wording undermines your authorship claim. Another bad example is no AI was used. If that's a lie and it comes out later, your registration could be voided. And if you're in the middle of a lawsuit trying to enforce your copyright, that's basically catastrophic for your case. So how do you word AI involvement? Focus on on your role, not the AI's. The author used AI tools to generate raw assets, which were then extensively edited, curated, and transformed into the final work through substantial human creative input. You can see the difference. If you're centering on your authorship, the AI is a tool you used, not a collaborator, and not fully generated. Now, documentation. This is your defense if anyone ever questions your authorship. You need to be able to prove that you exercise creative control. Save your prompts, every single one. Keep a log of what you asked for and what you got. This shows your creative direction. Keep your edit history. If you're working in Unity or Unreal, your version control system should capture this. If you're using Photoshop for art, keep your project files with layers and revision history. This shows your transformation process. Screenshot your workflow. Show before and after. AI output versus your final integrated asset. This is visual proof of your creative input. Document your decision making. Keep notes about why you chose certain AI outputs over others, what modifications you made, and how you adapted them to fit your game's vision. This shows your creative judgment. Think of it like this. If you had to go to court and defend your copyright, you'd need to convince a judge that you were the author and not the AI. So your documentation is your evidence. The more you have, the stronger your case. And here's a practical tip. Make documentation part of your workflow. Don't wait until you're done and try to reconstruct the process. Build it in from the start. Create a project folder called Process Documentation. Drop screenshots, prompts, notes, early drafts, and anything else that shows that it's your work. It takes 5 extra minutes per day, but if you ever need to defend your authorship, those 5 minutes could be worth thousands and thousands of dollars in legal fees. Act 4, registering the game. Let's walk through the actual registration process. You've finished your game and you've documented your process, and now you want to register it with the Copyright Office. When registering a video game with the U.S. Copyright Office, you'll start by visiting copyright.gov, creating an account and clicking Register a Work. From there, it's important to understand that a video game typically contains 2 copyrightable components: the audiovisual elements, the visual sounds and interactive experience, and the computer program, which is your underlying code. For that reason, you generally register the audio-visual portion under motion picture / other audio-visual work, since the game's on-screen experience fits that category. Not work of the performing arts, which is generally reserved for plays, musical, and other stage performances. However, ensure and check with someone to confirm that that is the route that's actually best for you and your situation. Again, this is not legal advice, so consult some professionals advising you on the specifics there. If you want to protect your game's source code, you can register it separately as a computer program, following the guidelines in Circular 61 on the Copyright Office's website. In some cases, if the same person or company owns all the components and the game is published as a single product, you may be able to include both the audiovisual and software elements in one registration. However, if different people or teams created the code, art, or music, it's often best to file both registrations, one for each. Registering your video game provides a public record of ownership and allows you to pursue statutory damages and attorney fees if infringement occurs. That's a big deal because you do have an implicit copyright. However, you are not able to actually file and sue in court. And also, lawyers cannot necessarily recoup their legal fees, and thus it might be harder to find a lawyer to take your case. So you'll fill out the standard information, the title of your game, your name as an author, the creation date, publication year, and then you get to the section about third-party or AI-generated content. This is the disclosure moment. There's a yes or no question. Does this work contain material created by artificial intelligence? If you used AI in any capacity, check yes and don't try to hide it. Then comes the text box. This is where you describe what the AI did and what you did. And here's a template you can adapt. This work includes elements generated with assistance from AI tools, including, and then you'll list your specific tools, GitHub Copilot for code suggestions, Midjourney for concept art, etc. All AI-generated content was substantially transformed through human creative input, including, and then you'll describe your modifications, extensive editing, rewriting, integration with human-authored content. Then you'll say the author exercised meaningful creative control throughout the development process, making all significant design, narrative, and aesthetic decisions. The final work reflects substantial, original human authorship. That's going to cover most of your bases. You're disclosing your AI use, you're explaining your role, and you're making an authorship claim explicit. Now the deposit. You're going to need to upload something that represents your work. So for games, this is usually gameplay footage, 5 to 10 minutes showing different aspects of the game, a menu, screenplay, gameplay mechanics, story sequences, visual style. And the pro tip is in your gameplay video, include moments that showcase your human creativity most obviously. Show hand-drawn elements, show unique narrative choices, mechanics that require design thinking. Give the copyright office a clear picture of your creative contribution. If you are also registering your code, you'll upload source files. So typically the first and last 25 pages of your code base will do. If your code includes AI-generated sections, make sure your deposit also shows human-authored code so it's clear you're not submitting only AI output. You might also want to upload supplementary documentation, process notes, before and after comparisons, early drafts. The Copyright Office doesn't always require this, but it can strengthen your application, especially if your AI use was extensive. Pay the fee. As of 2025, it's $65 for a single online application, and you're going to hit submit. Processing can take anywhere from a few months to over a year, depending on the backlog. So your registration is backdated to the day of your filing date, so you're protected from that moment forward. Once approved, you'll get a registration certificate. That's your proof of copyright, and that's what lets you sue for infringement claims, statutory damages, and enforce your rights. And if your application ever gets questioned or rejected, don't panic. The Copyright Office sometimes asks for clarification about AI use. Respond promptly, provide your documentation, and explain your process in detail. Most clarifications result in approval as long as you can show genuine human authorship. The key here is honesty and documentation, because if you have those two things, registration is relatively straightforward. But again, even the Copyright Office isn't working off a single playbook and is testing the waters with every incoming application as we currently do it. Act 5, creating ethically. Let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about what's legal, and now let's talk a little bit about what's ethical, because those aren't always the same thing. So just because you can legally use AI-generated code doesn't mean you should use it without thinking about where it came from. GitHub Copilot was trained on millions of open source repositories, and some of those repositories had permissive licenses. Others didn't. So some developers never consented their code being used for AI training. So when you use Copilot, you are benefiting from that training data set. And while Microsoft argues that it's fair use, the debate still isn't settled. Developers are suing, and the outcomes will shape the industry and your games for the future to come. So what's your responsibility as a creator? So I'd argue this. Be conscious of what you're using and where it came from. If you're using AI-generated code, understand its origins, review it carefully, make sure it's not reproducing someone else's proprietary work. Same with art, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. They were trained on billions of images scraped from the internet. Many artists have consented, while some are still actively fighting against it. So when you use these tools, you're participating in that ecosystem. And that doesn't make you a bad person, but it does mean that you have a choice about how you participate. You can use AI responsibly, you can credit human artists who influenced your style, you can support legislation that requires consent for AI training data, you can be transparent about your process with your audience. Or you can just take the speed and convenience without thinking about the impact. But here's the bigger question. What kind of game development culture do you want to build? One where AI replaces human creativity, or one where AI magnifies it? Because AI doesn't replace creativity in my mind. It shifts it. It makes some things easier and some things harder. It lowers barriers for beginners and raises questions for everyone. The developers who thrive in this era won't be the ones that use the AI the most. They'll be the ones who use it intentionally, who understand what it adds and what it takes away, who keep their human fingerprints on every aspect of their work. You're not just coding, you're making decisions about what game development should be. Every time you choose to modify an AI output instead of using it raw, you're asserting the value of human creativity. Every time you document your process, you're protecting authorship as a concept. And that matters because the next generation of developers is watching and waiting. They're learning what's normal, what's acceptable, what's professional. If we normalize careless AI use now, that's the standard they'll inherit. But if we model responsible innovation, intentional creativity, and respect for authorship, both ours and others, then we'll build a better foundation. AI is here and it's powerful and it's not going away, but it doesn't have to erase the human element. It can amplify it if we choose to use it that way. So in closing, here's where we land. You can use AI. You should use AI if it helps you create better games faster. But you have to stay the author. You have to maintain creative control. And you have to document your process so you can prove it. Register your work. Disclose AI use honestly and save your prompts. Keep your edit history. Screenshot your workflow. Build a paper trail that shows the human fingerprints all over the final product and ensure that they're really there. And speak with a licensed professional if you can swing it, as this is not legal advice. Because at the end of the day, authorship isn't about whether you use the tool, it's about whether you made creative decisions, if you meant something, whether you exercise judgment, whether the work reflects your vision. AI can generate pixels and code, but it can't generate vision. That's still yours, for now. You're not just coding, you're carving human fingerprints into machine-made clay, and those fingerprints are what make your work copyrightable. They're what make it yours. So use AI boldly, but use it consciously and cautiously, because the jury is literally still out on much of this, and never let the algorithm drive. You are the creator, the AI is just the chisel. So one closing question before I leave you guys, where is your personal line between AI assisted and AI generated? At what point does AI contribution become too much for you to comfortably claim authorship? I'd love to hear what you guys think. Please leave me a comment and we can discuss it hopefully in another episode going forward. So please follow and subscribe for more content that helps walk artists like you through the ever-changing landscape that is AI and technology. Thanks for watching AIX Gaming. We will see you next time.
That was AIX Gaming, presented by the Rift Fitters Network. Thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe for weekly updates keeping gaming industry creators like you informed in the new era.